Welcome to the Wayne Bennett podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to the Wayne Bennett podcast. My name is Wayne Bennett. This is episode number 38. And our guest today is a local businessman, philanthropist, big Marshall sports fan, a volunteer extraordinaire, and a world-class golfer, Larry Foster. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Wayne. That world-class golfer, I don't think it's, I'm glad you put that last, because I'm certainly
world-class wannabe golfer.
Right, exactly.
Well, you grew up in Beckley, didn't you, Larry?
Right.
Where did you go? Tell us a little bit about.
Well, I was, actually born in Oceana in 1952, and I moved to Beckley when I was 2 years old after my father passed away. And you lived over on over by New River Park on North Oakwood Avenue, that neighborhood. All my life. Graduated from Woodrow in 70 and went to Marshall from 70 to 75 and back home. So I actually been out of Beckley for 5 years, all my life, and that was it. Yeah.
So you were only about two when your dad died?
Right, 2 years old, yes.
Oh, gosh, hey, he must have been a young guy.
Yeah, he was 36.
Wow.
Died, just unexpectedly. And so my mother's from England. My dad was from Hinton. They met, I don't know, working, when they were working young. And they ended up in Oceana, which he was working, I think, at the Piggly Wiggly, as a butcher. And so she moved back, to Beckley. And
is your mom still alive?
No, my mom died about 15 years ago.
Did she?
Yeah.
Now, when you lived in the North Oakwood
area, New River Park, right in that area.
Okay, what school did you go to?
Well, it started out as Sprague Elementary, which is where the Board of Education is right now. And our principal then was Brooks Adair, and so after he retired, they renamed the school Brooks Adair Elementary. So I went there, and it went through 7th grade. And after that, I went to Beckley Junior High for the 8th and 9th grade, and then, of course, Woodrow Wilson. And our first year at Woodrow was the first year of the new school in 68.
Now, when you were growing up, did you play sports, or you did active in anything?
I didn't play any really organized sports. Midget league football, little league baseball. I think I played Beckley Junior High football. But after that, I didn't really do any organized sport other than I played them all. Sandlot, basketball, baseball, everything. Enjoy it. I've always enjoyed sports, but you just never really got into the organized, team sports through high school and everything.
What was at New River Park while you were growing up? They didn't have the swimming pool.
When they first built I think New River Park opened in 1960 in that area. And it was actually a slate dump. It was actually it was just a mountain of slate, and they took years to remove that. And that was basically, if you're familiar with New River Park, the flat area on the bottom where the pool is, and around that big circle, right, that whole grassy area was just a big slate dump. And of course, as kids, we'd always go over and play over there too, and come back filthy, dirty, and But anyway, when they got it finished, it was basically a big field. The shelters there, the original big shelters there, and in front of there were the basketball courts and tennis courts, and there was a big softball field right beside it. Where the tennis courts are now was softball. And how the courts were built, they had like a little lip around them, and they would flood that area and ice skate in the winter.
I remember that. And I never did ice skate.
Yeah, and actually I worked there, I guess when I started maybe 13, 14 years old, I started working at the park. I think they paid about $1 an hour. Worked concession stand. I would actually open and close the gates in the mornings at night, because I just lived around the corner.
Now, did the city own it?
The city, yeah. And in the wintertime, they flood it, and I would work the ice skating rink. They had a big fireplace there. Always kept a fire going. And I think we charged $0.25 a day to ice skate.
Now, did y'all rent shoes, or did they had to bring their skates?
Had to bring their own skates.
Had to bring their own skates.
Right.
Yeah, I remember when even later when they had sledding off the hill there and tubing and a lot of people getting killed coming off of that hill.
That was a big hill, but it was packed. It was literally packed,
I actually worked for David Hill Construction when we poured the swimming pool.
I was there.
And it was, they closed Raleigh Ready Mix down for the day, and all they did was send their trucks up there, and David hired everybody he knew.
That's right. That's right.
And we liked to work up there because we were getting federal pay. And of course, back then it was like $3.65 an hour. We thought we was rich, but our regular pay was only like about $1.75.
I was actually in college, and that was my summer jobs. Was at New River Park. I cut grass, just maintenance all the way through college. I worked at the park, and I remember that pool being built, and when they were pouring that concrete, it was like get out of the way. It's coming.
And you had as far as the inside, the pool, we poured that all in one day,
right.
And of course the platforms around it we took time afterwards, but it was something else. Now, when you were in high school. Were you involved in any other activities, or what'd you do? So you worked all the time.
I worked. I actually, when I was in high school, I worked at Beckley newspaper when I was at the high school, but I would go in at night. I would go in at 11 o'clock at night and work circulation room till about 3:30 or 4 in the morning.
And then go to school?
And then I'd go to school and, try not to sleep through first 2 or 3 classes, but I did that all through high school. And then in the summers, I'd, of course, work at New River Park also. And in college, in the summers, I'd always come back and work, for the city. And
now you went to Marshall. Why did you decide to go to Marshall?
My brother. Start with my brother went there. So I was kind of familiar with that, and I just, I'd been down there a few times. It was close to, it was pretty close to home, a couple hours, or if I needed to get home or anything. I got a degree in education. And, I got a master's in health and phys ed and a minor in recreation.
Now, you mentioned your brother, Steve.
Right.
Did you have any other siblings?
No, just Steve.
Now, what year did Steve graduate?
Steve graduated in 1965 from Woodrow, and 1969 in Marshall.
Okay.
And he went into Marine. He's been in Marine all his life. Still is.
Now, he played football and wrestled, didn't he, at Woodrow?
He was a 4-letterman at Woodrow. He football, wrestling, track, and baseball.
Yeah. And I know he was in the Raleigh County Wrestling Hall of Fame.
He wrestled at Marshall for 3 years.
And now, when you got out of Marshall, did you got a master's there? Did you?
Just not a master's, just undergrad.
Undergraduate.
Yeah.
And did you come back to Beckley and go to work?
Right. Yeah, I came back and I did my student teaching in Huntington, and. At that point, I just said, I'd like the recreation field a little bit more. So I got a job with City of Beckley as the assistant recreation director.
Did anybody have that job before, or
going back, Frank Rodriguez was the recreation director for the city, and he had hired me for summer jobs, because I lived near the park, and I got to know him a little bit. So he'd always hire me, in the summers and things, and then. After Frank went, I think maybe to Wheeling or somewhere, left Beckley, and Kermit Rose, the city recreation director, and I was his assistant under him. And at that time, I was more or less, not mowing the grasses or anything, or doing that, but I ran, the softball leagues, the basketball leagues, volleyball leagues.
Wow.
The swimming pool, just had a lot of things going on, but that was a very interesting job. Very interesting.
Well, I remember when you ran the softball league, and how many years did you run that? Jeff Graham was on here before.
Oh, yeah,
we were talking
about Jeff was about 12, I think.
He was.
He was the youngest scorekeeper in the state, I think, and did a fabulous job. I did. I think I worked for the city for, on and off through college, but I worked actually full time for 3 years.
And then why did you decide to leave as a city director?
I just always had always wanted to kind of, do something, selling.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, Spartan Sporting Goods had opened up in Beckley, and they were calling on us as far as buying softballs and things like that. And I got to know, them pretty well.
Now, who owned that?
Lee Frazier owned that Spartans at that time, and but I had a lot of salesmen coming in, from Cleveland and Columbus, selling. I was buying swing sets, recreational equipment, and I told my secretary, I said, that's what I'd really like to do something like that, to be able to, go out and sell. Anyway, Dave Baker, which later became one of my partners at Spartans. He was selling for Spartans, and they had just lost a salesman. And he was just in the office and got back at his office and called and said, "Hey, Larry," he said, "you know quite a few people." He says, "Anybody would be interested in selling sporting goods?" Well, I did. As soon as I hung the phone up, I looked at my secretary. I said, "That sounds like me." So I called him back and I said, "Do you think I could do that job?" He goes, "Oh gosh," he says, "Yeah, sure." Thinking you know a lot about sporting goods until you start. I was like lost, gosh, this is just, it's overwhelming how much is in the sporting goods lines,
Absolutely.
And not counting hunting and fishing. We didn't even do that. It was just.
Now, I don't know whether the city was getting out of the softball business. I remember when we talked about that.
Well, I think my last year there was 70. I started Spartans in 77. And I went through the summer. I got through all that. And then at that time, they were combining the recreation department, the street departments, all in the Board of Public Works.
Oh, I see.
And that kind of changed that whole way of doing recreation and stuff, as far as running the leagues and things like that.
Yeah, because I knew the players, we ran it 1 year before we left,
right,
and then went to the Fitzpatrick Park, yes. And but the city had been trying to get out of it, yeah. And now during when you started selling for Spartans. Mm-hmm. Now had they been in Oak Hill before?
They actually started out. It's called Fayette Industrial Sales.
Okay.
And it was in Oak Hill, and they sold a lot of electronics to schools. Reels. For film. Showing films and things like that. And then they started dibbling in softballs, balls, and things like that to sell. And at that time, Mr. Frazier had opened up a store in West Charleston called Spartan Sporting Goods. But it was in Charleston, at that time, you had Sport Mart down there, you had Bill Miller Sports, you had Red Jones Sports, you had all kinds of sporting goods stores in Charleston. So he was down there for 2 or 3 years and then opened up in Beckley, closed that one and opened up in Beckley, which is a lot, better for the store.
So they had you and Dave Baker on the road,
or Dave was actually, after I came in, he stayed inside. He was general manager.
And you were the only one on the road?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who were some of the coaches? I mean, some of the interesting coaches.
That's one thing I do miss. I retired 2 years ago, and that's one thing I do miss more than anything is the camaraderie I had with the coaches. Mm-hmm. Because over 42 years of, driving around all the schools meeting people, there was a lot of interesting coaches out there. But one of the most interesting, it was when I first started, I asked Mr. Frazier, I said, where do you want me to cover? He just looked at me and goes, everywhere. He says, Larry, he says, you're the only one, He says, you pick out where you want to go, And they weren't really calling on a lot of, accounts. They were kind of new here in town and stuff. But one of the first places I went was, and I told my mother, I said, I had not been back to Oceana. I'd never been there.
Really?
So I decided I'd go back to Oceana, and got in the car and drove. I got my little map out, and I said, well, Oceana High School. You had, Baileysville High School, Mullins High School. They had 6 high schools: Herndon, Glen Rogers, and Pineville. So I drove over Copperston Mountain, Bolt Mountain, went over through Copperston, and I got over, and I remember it's in the fall, and it was hot, and I pulled up behind the school. I don't know if you're familiar with Oceana. The field house. The field house is down behind the school, and there was one gentleman standing there by the fence, kind of surveying the land there, and had a red hat on with a black O on it. And I go, he's got to be somebody there, somebody said. So I went up and introduced myself to him. And I said, I'm, Larry Foster of Spartan Sporting Goods. And I said, I looked like I might have missed practice or something, but I was just kind of looking for some of the coaches. And he going, well, I'm the head football coach, John Beckheimer.
I was getting ready to say John Beckheimer.
And, and John, what a great coach he was,
Yeah.
And believe it or not, he was one of my favorites. He kind of took me under my wing, didn't buy anything for me for, a year, but I was always there. Every Tuesday I'd be in Oceana, and he just called me Foster, So he goes, Foster, he says, one day, he said, I might buy something from you. He says, you're always down here. It bothered me. And I remember the first time I just got in, I was sitting there, I was on a Friday, and I got back in the office about 1 o'clock, and the phone rings, and they said, Larry, coach over from Oceana needs to talk to you. So I got online, he goes, Foster, he said, I hope you have this. He said, I need a box and chain set, which is the 10-yard marker set for football. I didn't know what that was. I'm telling you, there's so much stuff in sport, box and chain set. And I went, okay. I looked at Lee and I said, hey, we got a box and chain set in stock. He goes, look, he had his file. He goes, yeah, we got 2. I get back on the phone. Hey, Coach, I got 2 of them. He goes, well, I just need one, Foster. So he says, okay. I said, I'll pop it to you Tuesday when I'm down. He goes, I need it tonight.
So there you go.
And I said, well, I'll be down. Give me about an hour and a half, So I get down there. This thing's about 7 foot high box, and with all the stuff in it. So here I come tugging across, the field. They're out there lining the field off and everything. Put it down. I said, Coach, here's that box and chain set. And he goes, that's good, Foster. He goes, you should put it together. He said, I'm not buying it. So I ended up learning how to put those things together too, So, but he was a great friend, And
you got to deliver. Don Knuckles and all them guys down that direction.
Yeah, great coaches and just a lot of good memories of guys like that. Really are.
Now, when did you get into opportunity to buy the place, or how did that work?
Probably around 5 years after we had, I was there. Mr. Fraser passed away, and the family decided, to sell the business. And Dave Baker and Jim Tanner and I, Jim was the accountant there, and Dave was the general manager basically, and I was the road. So we started and we bought the place and bought the building that was in downtown, across from the courthouse. That's where we started, and we had 6 people working.
Wow.
Had a guy in delivery and one lady out front and 2 ladies out front, and we did a lot of. Back in, you did a lot of walk-in business, softball leagues, little leagues, and things like that. And we were downtown, and then when the malls started moving in and town started disappearing, we kind of hung right in there until the end. But then we ended up going to the Raleigh Mall, and we were there for 3 years, and then we ended up at the Crossroads Mall. But at that time, I was at the Crossroads maybe just a couple of years, and our team business had actually continued to grow, and we needed a bigger space for just, when you get 600 basketballs in or whatever, you needed room, and the malls didn't have room like that. So we moved on Dry Hill Road. the mall stayed open as retail, and we operated out of Dry Hill, our location up there. And at the time, we had added silk screening capabilities, to print uniforms and shirts like that.
And during this time, you become a registered basketball official too, didn't you?
Right.
And I know you were calling some basketball games, and you spent a lot of time volunteering at the Y.
Right.
They relied on volunteers, and especially when they had their big March tournament.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was something else. How long did you officiate basketball?
Oh, about 17 years. I started actually at Marshall, and we would do, the youth leagues. I did intramurals at Marshall. I refereed some of those, and then youth leagues down there. So when I got back to Beckley, I started going to the Y and refereeing up there, and that was in the old YMCA on the Memorial Building, which were fabulous places to call, But it was a lot of fun, and then continued with the Y when they moved into the new building, calling on Saturdays or Tuesday, whatever nights they needed. But
you also found some time to be part of the Raleigh County Roadrunners, and we always had to have our Thursday night sessions at Jimmy's place.
Right.
And, And
great
Pete
runs.
Tarico and I were talking about that. Some of the characters that used to come in up there, and you could probably write several books.
Could very easy.
But you were running some. We got to run a marathon together,
Right.
and it's a funny story. We. I think it was your first marathon. I think it was my third. I think,
right.
But we went to the Marine Corps Marathon and been training a little bit. And this may not be totally accurate, but I remember they were getting together, and it was like 14,000 runners, and me and you kind of got stuck up there on a hill, and we run down at the last minute and got in the group where we were supposed to be in the back
group
with the slow guys. We were up there with the world-class runners, and when they took a picture at the Washington Post, there's two of us, man, right there up front smiling.
Yeah. I remember that. It was my first one. I think the longest I had run was the Charleston distance run, which was 15 miles. And, I was ready. And you kept saying, I think we're going out too fast. I go, oh, no, I feel good. I got out there about 16, 17 miles. And the 20th mile is when you hit that big wall. And the last 6 miles, I can remember just sitting on those park benches wondering, when's the cab coming by,
Yeah, we were out there about 16, 17 miles, and I kept checking the watch, and I said, "Daggone, man, we're going pretty fast."
Yeah.
And, I just wasn't really planning on going that fast. And you said, "Oh, I feel good." And then somewhere, man, it hit, and so I went on. I thought, well, I'm having a good race, so I went on and ran, and I qualified for Boston Marathon that year because of that pace.
I pushed you right out there,
But I didn't go. That's the only regret I have in running.
Right.
I didn't go to Boston, and I said, well, I got more years to qualify.
Right.
Never did happen again.
But that year I ran, and then the next year I went up again, and I think I knocked around 30 minutes off my time just by going. Pace yourself.
The experience. Yeah.
And I tell a lot of people who are running marathons, I tell them that story. I said, you don't think about it until around 20 miles out there, and then you're struggling for that. And we run 10Ks almost every weekend.
Yeah.
Well, that last 10K, it was like 2 days.
But the Marine Corps, I still recommend to people, if it's your first marathon, go to the Marine Corps.
It is absolutely fabulous.
Tell us about your family. When did you meet Chris during this
time? My wife's from Chicago, and I met her. Actually, I hired her for a summer job at New River Park.
Oh, yeah.
And I was, like I said, I was assistant recreation director there, and I did all the hiring for the summer jobs, and I hired her for the swimming pool. And it was a little story there. She didn't know she had even applied. Her mother applied. Her mother and father moved in from Chicago, and all the kids, they have five. There was five children. They were in different schools, and from Kentucky to Illinois to Chris was at Illinois State. When they came in for the summer, I called. I was calling for interviews, and I called her house, and her mom answered the phone. I said, is Chris Swanson there? Yeah. So Chris gets on the phone. I said, I'd like for you to come in for an interview for a summer job for the recreation department. She goes, well, I didn't apply for rec. And I heard her mom in the background say, oh, I did that for you. So, I got to thank her mom for, doing that, because that's where I met my wife. So, and we've been married 44 years and have two children. Mary is a speech therapist, and she lives in Princeton, has two children. Avery 6 and Ace is 3. And then Michael works for Ohio Transmissions, and he's in Ona, West Virginia. Him and his wife they just had their first. Sarah they had Emery. She's about 6 months old. So we have 3 grandchildren now.
That'll keep you busy.
And we love it. We absolutely love it.
I know you're real active with the Marshall Alumni Association. Tell us a little bit about your role around here.
Yeah, well, we have just a tremendous group of Marshall graduates that have worked very, very hard here the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, when we first started out, we started out just as a big Marshall Big Green chapter, and the only thing we did was a golf tournament. We'd have a golf tournament every May, and that's what we did. And there was about maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 of us that would put this on. And actually, they were putting it on before I started. I mean, I think I started playing in it, and then I got interested in helping, So I've been there about 30-some years now with this golf tournament, which has grown each year. But what we did about 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, was we had an alumni group too, and it kind of folded. It just never got off the ground. And 3 years ago, Dr. Gilbert, the president of Marshall, came up and met with us, and we had Coach Pruitt came, and we had lunch that day, and then we decided the next week we had a little get together at Black Knight, and we about 150 people come out, and at that time we combined he wanted us to combine our athletic, the Big Green and the alumni, kind of do it together.
Oh, okay.
So that's what we did. We changed our, club name, where I think it's the Southern West Virginia Coalfields chapter, But it's really grown, and thank goodness we're getting younger people in there, because I'm not. Some of us got a little older, and it's nice to get young people that really have got involved. But we've, our golf tournament we had this year was our best we've ever had. We have one in Wyoming County too. We have a bowl-a-thon, which is unbelievable good, over at Oak Hill, and we just had our first motorcycle rally.
I've heard about that.
And it went real well. When we have a couple people knew what they were doing there, thank goodness. Amanda, Ashley, she ran that thing, and it went off beautifully. And it'll get better next year, because I think everybody had a good time. Everybody went away with full food, and but it seems like when we try to do things, we really try to get people out there to have fun, enjoy their day, go away with some prizes and things like that. And then we have a dance. We'll have our third dance this year in January at Black Knight. And that's where we decided to do that and let everybody kind of dress up, wear ties and sport coats, and come out.
Yeah. And
we had the president of the university with a tall, one of the guests. We try to have, coaches are going to be at the golf tournaments and things, but we do try to have, some.
Now you raise money for Marshall. Is that money?
It's for
specified?
Yes, we raise it for what we do right now. We have we take care of 4 counties. We have Raleigh County, Fayette, Summers, and Fayette, Wyoming, Summers, and Raleigh. And right now we start out with $500 scholarships to a student in each county. Now we bumped that up right now to $1,500 for one student And we fund the money to Marshall for this. And Marshall, they go through the school counselors and find out. We don't, none of us here give out the scholarships. We let Marshall do that.
Yeah.
And you got to be a student. It's going to go to Marshall, and so we bumped that up to $1,500. And last year, what we did was we had a bumper year last year. We did $34,000 in monies, and we did $21,000, I think, to the Big Green, which goes to athletic scholarships, and the other, we have a $25,000 endowment that we're working on with the alumni. Plus, we do the $6,000 a year for scholarships.
That's great.
And we really had a bumper year last year. We had a lot of people come out for golf down in Wyoming County and Raleigh County. The bowling was great. It's just unbelievable. It's a fun day of bowling over at Pinheads over in
especially
Battlefield.
during a pandemic year too.
Yeah,
I mean,
really,
that's
really
great.
good. So, and
now
we're trying to get something in each county. Like we have the bowl-a-thon over at Pinheads in Oak Hill, which they do a fabulous job for us. Clear Fork Country Club down in Oceana does our Wyoming County, and then Randy Scott at Grandview, which is just an unbelievable course.
Yeah,
they do a great job, helping us do our golf, and then Black Knight's where our dance is.
Now, I know you retired a couple of years ago, sold out. I've heard that you've been a catalyst over at the Babe Ruth field, that you number one volunteer getting the field ready.
Yeah,
and
I enjoy, I cut grass when I grew up, at the parks. And actually, back when you played softball, I lined the fields off. It's just, so, Doug, we were talking, Doug, Lieber's with us with our alumni group, and he's the president of Babe Ruth. And he was telling me about, the field. And I said, well, gosh, I could take care of that. I'd love to do that, cut grass. And he said something about line. I said, hey, I can line the field off. I said, show me where the stuff is. I can do it.
So you go every day?
When they play Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays.
I see.
I take I do the infield, get it prepared, and then I get the drag the field for them, and then I line the fields off, put the batter's boxes and circles in, and then cut the grass probably twice a week during the season.
Well, it's great that they're doing what they're doing at Babe Ruth. And then Coach Barksdale's involved.
Coach Barksdale does a wonderful job with the signs. I mean, he's over there about every time I'm over there. And Doug and them have done a great job. Building that thing up from, I think it got down to about 3 teams. Yeah, and it's up to 7, and they even had fall league this year, which is really good. And they do a fabulous job over. I'm tickled to be part of it. Just what I do, just to see the kids play.
Well, and kids around town. I mean, everybody's got an opportunity to play baseball. I mean, Little League's built up, and they even had a fall league, I think, this year.
They did.
And Babe Ruth, and you got the Epling Stadium.
Right.
I mean,
there's a lot of baseball.
Yeah.
A lot of baseball. Yeah.
And it's a great gesture. But well, listen, I hate to tell you this, but our time is up. And
I enjoyed it.
I appreciate you coming by and keep on doing what you're doing. And the main question is, will you come back and talk to us? Because we've got a lot more to talk about.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And
Wayne, you and I go back a long way.
Oh, I know.
Truly.
And we got a lot of stories we may not want to tell, but I would love to have you back sometime.
Sure.
And
I really enjoyed it.
And the people out there, anybody that's interested, check us out on Facebook, Wayne Bennett Podcast. And if you want to be on the air, give me a note or contact me at awbennett50@gmail.com, and we'll get you on here. And until next time. Thanks, Larry, and remember, if you ain't dead yet, you're not done yet, and God bless you.